Good afternoon, everybody, especially the kids from Mary K. Good College Park and Trantwood Schools. You join us not for the first time here for a safari on the western fringes of the Great Kruger National Park. My name is James Henry. I am filmed by Willem Doornbraak, magnificent fellow that he is, and we start today's show quite sadly, really. What we have over there is a dead impala. Now, you can ask us any questions you like. You can just ask your teacher. She'll send them through to us, and we will do our level best, of course, to answer anything that you would like to ask. Also, a very warm welcome to our regular viewers who will be taking over the questions after 45 minutes. Now, I know this is a sad thing to see, everybody, but what we think has happened here is not that it was killed by a leopard or a lion or a hyena, which of course are the major predators out here, because if you look carefully you can't see any wound there. We think that it was possibly killed by another impala. Now, this is the time of the year when the impala are rutting. They fight with each other, and sometimes their fights can result in one of them dying. Either he's cracked his skull, or we'll turn him over and just have a look and see if he hasn't been pierced by another impala. Now, what I don't want to do is do that while you're watching, just in case it gets very disgusting. So I'm going to do that when we hand you over to someone else. And before we do that, I must just tell you that we have to scan very carefully around here, because the chances are that there's a leopard here, maybe. And maybe the leopard's just too shy to come and eat, or maybe it's so tired from killing the impala that it's hiding under a bush somewhere. And so what we don't want to do is frighten the leopard away, or get ourselves in danger by climbing out next to a leopard's dinner. So we won't do that. Very good news is that Ralph has got one of these chaps but alive.
Well, thanks, James, and welcome aboard, everybody, for another sunset safari. We're here in the Djuma concession of the Greater Kruger National Park in South Africa, and you're watching Safari Live with me, Ralph Kirsten, and on the camera we got Craig. How's it, Craig? Now, please don't forget to send us your questions through your teachers, and welcome aboard to all the kids in the different schools. We've got a lovely, cool, it's a very comfortable afternoon. So it's not hot, it's not cold, and, well, at least we've got a nice big group of impala here just near to us. I know James was showing you one that has unfortunately died. But here we have a group of females just feeding through the thickets, and there is one big male with them. He's obviously taken this on as his breeding herd. There's one with the little horns. That's a little male, but not to be confused with the females, because the females don't have any horns. Now, Caden, the impala will fight with each other, mostly the males, if not all the time the males, because they want to try to see who's the boss and who's going to be in charge of the big groups of females. So the males will stay in their groups together, but then they fight it out. It's almost like a football team trying to beat another football team so that they can get the cheerleaders and be very interested, or get the cheerleaders interested in them. So that's what these males are doing. They're fighting over the cheerleaders. And there's a little young male who's not going to be fighting with anybody just yet, because he's too young for now. All he's worried about is just staying with the ladies, with mommies, and getting enough food so that he can get nice and strong. And one day he'll also be able to fight with the other males for some of the females. So it's nice to just sit here a little bit, and wonderful that James is out with the vehicle. He is looking for animals on his side, and I'm going to be looking for animals on my side. A little bit different area to where James is in. We're both on vehicles, and we do have Steve, who's going to be out on foot as well. Now, let me just move forward a little bit, just to see if we can get a better view of these impala. Don't forget to send your questions through, though. I want to know what you guys want to know about these impala. Raiden, I think there could be in the region of about, let's see, because it was quite difficult for me to see when we first got here because they were all in the bushes, but now I can see there's a lot of impala here. They're all over the place. I would say there's about 40 or 50 of them, but maybe I'm being a little bit too much. Maybe 30 to 40. So this is wonderful, everybody. These are the animals that obviously leopard would be predating on or looking to eat, to catch. But for the moment, they all look very safe because they're watching. There's lots of eyes and ears. And, well, it's time for us to head you on over to the bushwalk team and see how their eyes and ears are going on the ground.
Well, we're a bit elevated at the moment to see if we can see anything in the distance. Welcome, my name is Steve Falconbridge. I'm joined on camera by Sebastian. This morning, boys and girls, we had a male lion down there, sitting on a termite mound like this. So our job this afternoon, we're going to go see if we can find him on foot. Might sound quite scary, and it is quite scary, but if you understand them and you respect them. Okay, so we've got our backpack. We've got suitable shoes on, we've got lots and lots of water, binoculars, enthusiasm. We're excited, we're out on foot in the African wilderness. It's always marvelous to be out here. Matthew, you want to know why we need safaris? Well, I suppose people don't need them, but once you've been on one, you want to do it again and again. The word safari means to go underneath African skies in search of big game. So that is what we're doing. We're under African skies and we're going in search of big game. Once you come here and you walk around in this area or drive around in this area, the smells, the feelings, you see your first wild lion, your first wild leopard, an African elephant really, really close, it'll change your life. Really, really will. There's lots of people who watch this show every single day for years and years and years. They absolutely love it, and the people who come to Africa come again and again and again. Seb and I are fortunate that they pay us to do this. It's terrible, I know. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it, you know. So we are walking. We're looking for that male lion because he is the kind of individual who would love to snap up that impala that James has found. He was looking this morning for anything he can eat. And this time of year, the males that are fighting or killing each other, getting caught, they're completely losing sight of everything that's going on around them. It makes them easy to catch. And I think James wants to tell you more about that.
So what we did was we got out of the car and we came to have a look here. Now this is not a rotting carcass, and so it's relatively safe for us to touch with our hands without putting on gloves. Ideally we should have gloves, but I don't have any in the car, and so I'm just going to be careful to make sure that I wash my hands before I put them anywhere near my face. But he's a fresh carcass. I don't think he's died of disease, but I don't know that. If he has died of disease, that disease could be on him still, and so we would want to wash our hands before we put them anywhere near our faces. So just remember that if you're ever out in the wilderness trying to figure out what's happened to an animal that you find dead. I maintain that I think this animal has died from fighting. Now what we can see, there are a few things we can see. First of all is that there is a lot of dung here. Can you see that, Viam? So there's a whole lot of dung here, which means he let go of this dung. What we call it is he loosed his bowels as he died. And that's a common response from mammals. What happens is that all their muscles relax and basically they just go to the loo. They make their last poop, if you like. Then if we look around here, we can see that there is signs of some kind of movement. Now, what that probably means is that he fell over and he was kicking his legs. So he didn't just die suddenly. But there is no evidence of much more of a struggle, but for this kind of pushed over grass. And I'm not sure if you're even able to see that. Can you see over here? Was that bush in your way? So it looks to me like there was a fight here. I don't think that the predator was involved because I cannot see any bite marks on this animal, and I cannot see why the predator would have left this area. And there were vultures on the ground when we arrived. Now, if there was a predator around here, they would never have tolerated having vultures around like that. So I don't think that's what's happened. What I think's happened is that he's either cracked his skull and his brain has basically ceased to function. He's hit his head so hard that his brain stopped working, or he's been stabbed somewhere by another horn, but I can't find any evidence of that. What I will say, though, if you look over here, and you look here, that there is evidence. You can see that kind of, this sort of powder that's coming off when I scrape it. Can you see that, Vim? This kind of yellowy stuff. That is bark from a tree like this, probably not that one, like this one here. And he's been scraping his head against the trees over the last little while to show his dominance. And so he's clearly been a rutting impala. He's been a male that has been fighting with other male impalas. So whether he's cracked his skull or not, I don't know. I can't feel anywhere where he might have. But I suspect that that is possible, because they hit themselves so very hard. There is one wound on his neck here, but it doesn't look to me that that was made by a predator. So that's what I think happened. It's possible that a very shy leopard is in the trees here somewhere waiting for us to go away. But as I say, there were vultures on the ground, which makes it very unlikely. So that's what's happened there. Let me plug in, see if you have any questions, and then I think we'll leave this rather sort of not very cheerful scene. See what else we can find somewhere that's a bit more cheerful than that. Okay, on we go. My plan from here is to go up towards a waterhole, see what we can find there. It's quite a warm afternoon. Ralph has got more mammals for you.
Now, everyone, I've just, it's very difficult to catch up with these animals over here because these are kudu and they like to be in the thickets. So we've just come up a little bit and we just want to catch up with them. I can't get very close to them, so we have to come up from far and just see if we can not scare them, but also at the same time try to get a view on them. And these are kudu. The ones without horns are the females. And remember that the antelope that don't have horns, when there's females that don't have horns with antelope, like impala and kudu, it's only the males that have horns with both of them. They like to live in the bushes, so in the thick bush. And the only reason that the males have horns is to fight with each other. And so it's the animals that stay out on the grasslands, out on the plains, that both males and females have horns, like the gazelle and the wildebeest, because they need to protect themselves from the lions out in the bush, out on the grasslands rather. But here in the bush, these animals will use the bush to jump in between the thickets and try and get away from predators rather than defend themselves with horns. And you can see those lovely white stripes on them as well. That helps to camouflage them. When you're looking at them in the bush, it breaks up the outline of their body. So it makes it very difficult for a predator to be able to spot them in the bushes. See there, a little bit of tail flicking. And as I say, the only reason I'm parked so far away is because it's difficult to get close to them. They normally go into the thick bushes if you go anywhere near them. So we just have to try and be a little bit further away, and then at least they're relaxed. There's another one. Braden, well, for the time being, it's still quite warm at this time of day, so we normally do see a lot of the antelope or the deer-like animals, but we are going to start seeing some more birds and things as it starts cooling down, and I'm going to head to the waterhole and try to see if we can spot some predators as well, like some leopard and lion and those kind of animals. That's what we're going to be looking for as we go along. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll see a hyena. Who knows? Maybe even a honey badger, all those kind of animals. But we do have to be lucky. Now, the kudu that we've just been seeing, they will be eating only leaves. So they bite leaves off all the little branches that they're walking past. Where the impala, they will also eat leaves that we were watching before, but they can also eat grass and all sorts of things. That's why we find there's a lot more impala than there are kudu. Why? Because they can eat lots of different things, and the kudu, they only eat leaves. So the impala can survive in different places and all over the country, whereas the kudu, they only like staying in the bushes and eating leaves. It's very special, hey? So I'm going to head on and let's see if we can find some predators. But Steve, out on foot, I wonder if he's got any predator clues to show us.
We're nearly in the area where we left that male lion. It's important for us to stay very close together. Could be anywhere here. The good chances are he's going to be lying in the shade because it's relatively warm right now. And if you're a big cat, that's what you do in this time of day. You just sleep. It's always quite something, even if we don't find him now. I love the feeling it gives you being on foot in the African wilderness. I'm not thinking about anything other than the moment. Hello Max, we're in Djuma in the Sabi Sands, Greater Kruger National Park, northwest and northeastern side of South Africa, not far from Mozambique. Oh, I think this was the one, eh, Herbie? Oh, we left him on top of this termite mound. He was hiding on top of there just like we were just now. Disappeared into the grass. I think so. Let's go a bit further and make sure it's the right one. No, it's not this one, Herbie. It's the next one. Evan, so because it's warm right now, you want to know what time of day predators usually come out to hunt. Basically, what happens is that because it's hot now, it's a lot of energy to move around. So as it cools down, even if it's an overcast day and it's not hot, they can hunt. Or if they're hiding in the long grass here and an animal walks past, they can hunt. But generally they hunt at night when it's cooler. They see perfectly at night. It's much more sort of in their advantage to hunt at night because they see beautifully in the dark. But it doesn't mean that they won't hunt in the day. But if you had to statistically put it together, they move more during the daytime, in the nighttime, and in the day, they sleep. All day long, they sleep. Very, very lazy animals. Okay, well, an animal that this lion really likes to eat is with James.
Yes. In fact, most predators out here would like to eat this, including the human being. That is a warthog. And they are delicious. If you ever eat one. We don't eat them out here, but I have eaten one before. I was very hungry. Anyway, that is a warthog. The most, I think, well, shall we say, underrated animal. Now, what that means is that most people don't appreciate, I don't think, quite how special they are. But I think they are very, very cute. I think that they do very well living out here, such short creatures, and yet they survive in such very big numbers. Now this particular one has got a youngster, and the youngster is just coming towards her now. It's actually very sweet. I don't know if you can see there. Just behind that tree. And the little one is scared of us, but the mother is not. And in fact, I know this warthog, Sow, we call the female. She's been around here a lot before, and she is one of the very few that do not run away from the cars. So she's just carrying on eating but the little one is afraid of us. But he doesn't know, should he run away, because Mum is not running away. You still see him at all? There he is. There's a little fellow. Ella, a predator is an animal that preys on another animal. So a predator of warthogs would be lions, hyenas, leopards, sometimes wild dogs, unusually, and even more unusually, cheetah. Those are predators. Steve on foot is very brave this afternoon.
Still there, his tail. Yeah, he's looking, eh? Okay, so he's... Boys and girls, we just got to stand very quietly now. There's a male lion on foot. He wasn't limping this morning, Herbie. Herbie seems to think he's slightly injured, potentially run into confrontation with other males. Any big 5 animal like this is potentially dangerous on foot, so we need to just move back a little bit. He's a beautiful specimen. I reckon he's about 3.5 or so. Watch out for the holes. The objects of bushwalk is to help find these animals. Okay. He's not looking happy, eh, Johnny? I'll talk to you soon. Lions are potentially dangerous because they eat meat. They see us as a threat to their existence. And encountering them on foot, normally in the daytime, they have a fear of us, so they normally move off. But he's not moving away, which means that, but he's okay now. We've given him some space. See, he just shook his head, but he's looking at us in the long grass. This is about as good as it gets with a lion on foot. You don't want to make him charge. You don't want him to make a run at you and growl and snort. That does happen from time to time. But they're just trying to scare you, trying to make you move away. Once you've given them space, comfort zone, they relax a little bit. But see how invisible he is in the long grass there. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk on the radio, and we're going to get someone with a vehicle to come in to actually look at this animal with the car. Much easier. That's how you get your best shots. Okay, well, we're going to maneuver around. Just move out a little bit. And while we do that, let's go and see James and his Boomba.
Well, there's the Pumbaa. You can still... No, she's still there, still eating away, which is very nice. Isn't that exciting to see a male lion on foot? That is very unusual, everybody. And it is really very special indeed to have such a big predator on foot. And people often ask us, they say, is it dangerous for us out here? Well, it would be dangerous if you didn't know how to react to a male lion like that. But of course, Steve is very experienced, and so is Herbert, the tracker that he's with. And so they are absolutely fine on foot with a male lion. Kerrigan, I think you're asking, if I heard correctly, if warthogs are killed with horns. Is that right? Oh, are they pigs with horns? Well, no, they're not. No pigs have horns as far as I know, but they do have tusks. And all pigs have got, to a greater or lesser extent, what we call tusks, and they are modified canines. Now, of course, that was probably meaningless to you, but if you think of the big, long teeth on, say, a lion or your dog, if you've got dogs or cats at home, if you open their mouths, you'll know that they've got those long teeth. Those are called canines. And on a warthog, those canines are even longer, and they stick out sideways, and those are the ones that you can see on the top there and on the bottom. They've got top and bottom long canines, and all pigs have them, even domestic pigs. Not as long as warthogs, but they all have them, and they're very sharp, and it's how the pigs defend themselves, and of course how they manage to dig for tubers and delicious things like that under the ground. So they don't have horns, they've got tusks. Alright, now Steve still being very brave with his lion. Let's go back and see.
Yes, well, he gave us the initial signs of a sort of agitation, and we gave him the space. We've moved away a bit. He's in the shade. He's still making little low rumbling calls, but we're keeping our face to him. We're not turning our shoulder. That's very important in these situations. If you do ever encounter yourself out here on foot, the most important thing is never ever to panic, never ever to run. With cats, by running you just basically tell them that's your target and they will chase you. You're food and they'll chase you. Wow. Payson is a big male. He's only young still. He's only about 3.5, maybe 4. Somewhere around there. He's probably on about 480, maybe 450 pounds. He's a big boy. He's a very big boy. He's the largest carnivore in Africa. And he normally is not on his own. He sometimes is with his 2 brothers, which makes it even more impressive. This is a new male in from the north. Evan, yeah, you wouldn't know why they're not in packs. Well, they call them prides, and male lions form what we call coalitions, and that's to sort of dominate other males and to look after as many females as they can. And last week we had him very close by with his 2 brothers, but there are 4 bigger males that occur in the area, or older males should I say, and there seems to be some confrontation between them. We're not sure what happens after dark. We don't follow them all the time. We just found him this morning on his own. Herbie thinks he looks a bit injured. He looked fine this morning. I think maybe he's been lying on his leg or something and he's just got a bit of a limp, but that we can check out later. But this morning he looked fine to me. I think he's just been on his lying, when you get a bit of a funny leg when you've been lying for too long. Evan, you want to know if there's any animals that eat big cats? Well, when a big cat gets killed, maybe by a lion, even if it is a lion, sometimes the lions eat them. Sometimes leopards eat big cats as well. Hyenas will definitely eat a dead lion, and vultures will eat anything meat. So it really depends, you know. Sometimes lions kill other lions and then they don't eat them. Sometimes they do. It's really hard to say in the moment. Like sometimes male lions kill cubs and they eat them, and sometimes they don't eat them. It really depends on the day. There's stories out, documentaries out of a leopard that's had her cubs killed and then she's eaten the cub. So it's really, really strange how it works and what's going on in the animal's mind when it happens is very hard to understand. But you must bear in mind, boys and girls, this is 100% wild lion. And he is beautiful. Kai just disappears in the long grass there. Wow, Dylan, he can cover about 21 feet in a second at charging speed. So he can run at about 45, maybe 42 miles an hour. That's pretty quick. They are sprinters. They cover short distance very quickly. But male lions are actually generally quite relaxed on foot because, you know, they're all bravado, they're all brave. It's the females you've got to watch out for because they generally have cubs. They generally have something to say about you getting close to their cubs. Who's a male, you just, you want to come here? Come here. I might shout at you, I might not. But this is fantastic. Hello, Corey. You want to know why he's got long hair on his head? Well, it's going to get longer than that. when they get older, the male lions, they develop what we call a mane, which is that hair around the neck, and that helps to minimize when they fight. There's lots of energy, or lots of attack happens on the neck and the throat, and it protects the neck and head against the blows taken by other lions. And also, for example, this guy's got quite a young mane. He's still developing. When he sees a bigger male who's got much more hair on his head and on his mane, he's more impressive, and it's more of a sort of a intimidation strategy. They don't want to fight every time they see another male. Sometimes the mane itself keeps the other male from fighting him. Sometimes they develop these long black manes, and they look very impressive. But from behind, they don't actually look that big, but from the front, they look enormous. So it's often just intimidation, but the primary reason is for defending against when they fight. So you can also see the age of lions by that. Okay, well, while we catch our breath, let's catch up with Ralph and see what he's been up to.
Yeah, how amazing is that, everybody, that Steve's found some lions on foot, and, well, do run away very quickly. Oh, there he goes. You see, you've got to be very quick with these little guys. That's called a steenbok. Steen meaning stone in Afrikaans, so it's because he always stops and acts like a little stone before he runs off into the bush. There he goes. That's one of the smaller little antelope. So wonderful that we've seen some lions, and we've seen some impala, kudu, and now we've got the small little guys as well. Now, Clayton, the grass is so high because we've just got to the end of summer, so we're in our autumn months. I think for you guys, where you are exactly in the northern hemisphere, you'll be going into spring now, so your grass will just be starting to grow. Ooh, here we've got another species of antelope. I just want to try and get a nice position that we can see them nicely. They are moving. And so the grass here has grown. It's not going to be growing anymore. Slowly but surely it's going to be dying off quite soon. But here's some nyala. Nyala, a little bit different to the kudu that we saw earlier. These are nyala females. Slightly different. They're a little bit more brown than the females, rather than grey. Now, Evan, they hide in the grass because they need to keep away from the predators like the lions and the leopards. Now, this is a Nyala male. The ones that walked in front of him were all the girls. Now, he's the big boy. Look at that. And he's very good looking, isn't he? And he needs to be, because he's got to look after those beautiful girls, doesn't he? And, well, so that's it. They need to hide in the bush to stay away from predators, and that's also what they eat. So they'll be eating the leaves and a little bit of the grass sometimes, but also trying to just hide away from the predators as well. So I saw some elephant tracks a little bit earlier, and there's some big elephant dung just on the road in front of us. So maybe we'll get lucky and see some of our largest land mammals. The African elephant. I'm hoping that maybe they'll be going for a drink down just by the dam where we're going towards. Hopefully we'll catch them down there. We can't promise anything because here we're in the wild. We're not in a zoo. Now, Andrew, a lot of the animals are faster than the lions, but the lions, they can go on a small distance. They can go very fast. So the animals that the lions are chasing, the lions need to get very close to them before they go for them, because they can go fast for a very short space of time. But if the lions run from too far away, the animals will be able to get away. So that's the reason why the lions and the leopards, they need to get very close before they pounce. because then they've got a very good chance of catching their prey. Otherwise, the antelope are going to just get away, and the lion and the leopard will have run for nothing. He'll be all tired, he'll still be hungry, and he'll have no food, which would be silly of him. Hey, so he needs to try and get very close before he pounces. It's a little bit quiet over here. Okay, so I'm heading down towards the dam, and let's hope there's some elephants there. I'm going to carry on towards the water, but James, my friend, is also out on the vehicle, and I wonder what little clues he may have for you on his side.
Right, everyone, sorry about the lack of me in the picture there, but I thought I'd come up and tell you about this mound that I'm standing on. I'm not going to tell you about what built it, because many of you, of course, will know that this was built by termites. But what is interesting, and given that you are in a science class right now, all of you, what's interesting is the soil that it's made of. Now, one of the most important parts of this whole area that we can see here, the low veld of South Africa, which means the lowlands, is the soil. And this soil is very poor and for agriculture. So if you can see around me on this termite mound, you can see it's a very pale white color. And that's normally indicative, or it shows, that there are very few chemicals in the soil. And of course, plants need good chemicals to grow out of the soil. And they need to be fertilized. And that's why farmers put fertilizer on their fields. But the soil here is very poor, and it hasn't been fertilized naturally by volcanoes for thousands and thousands of years. So those very fertile areas of the world have normally had ash from volcanoes falling on the soil and fertilizing it naturally. And that has not happened over here. And that is why the soil is pale. And it's also why this area is such a magnificent wildlife area. Because if it was any good for growing something that a human being could sell, like maize or wheat or barley or something like that, then you can be sure that people would be growing things here. Just looking in this hole, nothing there, I don't think. It's good, sometimes snakes live in those holes. And so it's important to understand that although we come normally to an area like this to look at lions and leopards and elephants and impalas and warthogs and that sort of thing, it's important to understand that none of that would be possible without the soil. It starts with the soil, then it goes to the trees and the grass, and eventually it goes to the wonderful animals that we have here. And so what I want you to take from this little lesson is that the soil here is very poor for agriculture, but it's good for the wild animals out here that have evolved to live and to survive on the vegetation that grows from this very poor soil. Isn't that quite interesting? I think it's quite interesting. Evan, we do sometimes, we don't all the time check on the animals when we're not filming, but if we really want to find a leopard, or there's a leopard sitting in a tree close by to the camp, then sometimes we'll go and have a look. But you know, we are out in the bush for 6 hours every day. That's quite a long time to be out in the bush. And so most of the time when we're not out on safari like we are with you, well, then we're not looking for animals, we're normally doing other things. We're going to drive down towards where Steve's lion is and have a look at him. But it's going to take a little while to get there. So I suppose the other thing we can talk about, if I can't find you an actual animal, is the season. And of course we're going into winter now, and you guys are going into summer. And I'm sure you're very happy to be going into summer, because it's a beautiful time of the year. And winter, well, winter out here, believe it or not, is probably our best time of year, because it doesn't get very cold, and every day is clear and blue and beautiful like this one is. And if you want to see how it's becoming winter, when we look at this tree over here, you can see that the trees, or the leaves, are turning yellow. And they're turning yellow because, of course, it's what you would call the fall, what we call the autumn. Evan, those big termite mounds don't just house one termite, you see. Evan, they house many, many millions of termites. And so in the same way that one person can live in a small hut, well, millions of people need whole cities and apartment blocks to live in. And it's exactly the same for the termites. Termites, there are millions of them living in all those mounds, and so they need a big house because there's so many of them. In the same way that if you go to New York City, look, there's another termite mound, there are millions of termites in there. If you go to New York City, there are millions of people living there, of course. And so because there are millions of people living there, they have to have lots and lots of buildings. And lots of them are very big tall apartment blocks that can look after a lot of people. Okay, let us continue down the road. We'll try and get to the lion before the end of your lesson. Now, while we do that, Ralphie's got something else to show you.
Well, I'm up to exactly what I was up to just now. I'm still looking for anything that moves, but in particular, for the moment, some elephants. I went past a small water hole, and now there weren't any elephants there, so I'm going to go and look for another water hole and see if they're coming down to drink. Because it's that time of day when elephants would want to go and drink, because it's quite warm, it's quite hot, and elephants like to drink lots of water every day, especially when it's very hot like it is today. So that's why I'm going to all the water points and trying to see if the elephants are around. And that's lots of signs of them all around, lots of tracks along the road, but we're just moving up behind them and we just want to catch up with them. Ella, most of the males that I've shown you have horns because they live in the bushes, in the thick, where there's lots of trees, you know, it's not like in the Masai Mara where there's lots of grass everywhere over big distances. In those places, that's where you have like the wildebeest and the gazelle and the topi. Those, both male and female, have horns because they protect themselves mostly against lions and cheetah that are going to hunt them out on the grasslands, and so they don't have any other way of defending themselves except with their horns. But here in the bushes here, where there's a lot more trees and thick vegetation or bushes, the animals can jump through the thorns and through the branches, and so only the males have horns with those kind of animals because they need to fight with other males. That's all. So they have those horns for that reason, and the other ones jump through the bushes and through the thorns as their defense. So that's why there's a difference, and you can actually tell between the two different kinds of animals, whether they live in the bush or whether they live on the grasslands, by whether both male and female have horns or if it's only the males. So that's interesting, hey? Okay, so still going to try and find us some elephants, everybody. That's my aim for now. But while I'm looking for them, off to Steve and what it was like with the lion.
Thank you, Ralph. It's always nice to find an animal you're looking for on foot. I know we did leave him in the area this morning, but there's such a good opportunity that he would have moved off towards a dam, towards a waterhole. And it does happen, and then we have to spend hours trying to find him again. So it's just as well that when we got up there to that termite mound, instead of going straight towards it, we did a big loop around the back. And I'm sorry if we didn't get the beginning of that live segment, but it was getting a little bit intense in there. But fun, nonetheless. It really gets the heart going. They say to be a real man in Africa, you need to be able to stand and stare a lion in the eye and not run away. We did it, Seb. Good man. Now we're going to go and check some pans and some water holes and see what else is about this afternoon. Max, you want to know if there's any animals that are friends? Well, out here we find certain hornbills that like to follow the mongooses around, because the mongooses stir up food, and then the hornbills capitalize on anything that they might have missed or chased. But none of the predators are friends, really. I think, predators, they compete with each other so much that there's no time for being friends, really. And there's always interactions between them. You find impala, zebra, wildebeest, kudu, waterbuck all hanging out together. It's purely because there's more eyes and more ears to see lions like that approaching. But whether it means they like each other or not is a different story. Okay, well, thank you to the schools for joining us this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed Safari Live and with us on foot and in the vehicles. Until next time, have a beautiful, beautiful morning. And on that note, we're going to go back over to James.
Now, good afternoon again to the rest of our normal viewers. Normal, you're all normal, everyone's normal, of course. There is no abnormal, but our regular viewers, better way of putting it, as I bump over the Vuurtela Dam. We're going to see if we can't find the male lion that Steve and Herbert found a little bit earlier. Please do talk to us using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and of course the chat stream on YouTube. You can send through us any questions you might have. Oops, bumpy today. Now I think they went down here, and then we should be able to find the lion. I think he's just in here somewhere. Now my question is, where of course are the other two Avoca males? I haven't heard any reports of them, and there was some talk that they had been chased off by some Birmingham boys, but I'm not sure where those rumours come from. Oh, I see. Viam says Tino had quite a big belly when we saw him last week. What do you think he ate an Avoca Male? He had some avocado, did he? Ah, right. Viam says yes, exactly. I'm going to disagree with Viam there. I don't think that Tino, the Birmingham boy, ate one of the Avocas. Alright, I got that we must link to Ralph, who's got an approach to life that is something of kind of slowly.
Well, I'm not the only one, because here is a fellow that carries his house around with him everywhere he goes, and, well, we haven't been able to find a tortoise. Oh, sorry, we haven't been able to find a leopard, but we have been able to find a tortoise, and not any tortoise, a leopard tortoise. And look at that, he can actually move quite fast when he wants to. But just imagine carrying your house around with you on your back, and it's actually part of your back. So whenever there's any danger, he can just pop himself back into his shell, and generally he's very safe once he does that, especially once they've made it to this age, and then they are quite safe with that very big shell of theirs. And these tortoises can swim as well. I wonder, I think he probably had a little drink before we saw him. So we didn't see any elephants coming down for a drink, but we have seen a leopard tortoise here at Treehouse Dam, the Treehouse Water Point. Lovely site it is. I can see there's tracks that the elephants were here, so I think we've missed them. They were already here a little bit earlier. We already had a drink a little bit earlier in the day. So anyway, a little bit quiet here. Nonetheless, we are going to carry on and see what else we can find. At least we spotted a nice little leopard tortoise there. Those leopard tortoises, they'll be eating on all sorts of vegetation, and sometimes they even eat lion or leopard poo. Now that's really strange, hey? But why would they do that? Well, they do that because they need lots of calcium. Because of that shell that they make to go over them, they need to eat some poo sometimes from the lions and leopards, because lions and leopards eat bones. So there's lots of calcium in their food, and that will then come out in their poo, and the tortoises get some help from the lion and leopard to make their shell. So that's quite interesting, hey? But we don't want to be going around eating poo. Yuck! But for the tortoise, that's the way that he gets some help to make that very strong house of his on his back. Now, where are you, elephants? Clifford, the largest tortoise species that we have is that one that we were just looking at now. That one was a very small one, but they can get much bigger than that. And I know that there are some that can even live over 100 years and reach weights of about 150 pounds. Wow, that's very big, hey? So these leopard tortoises, they are the biggest ones that we have in Africa, and well, they do get quite big indeed, but I'm sure that there are some bigger tortoises in other places, especially tropical countries like the Galapagos or Madagascar. They have some giant tortoises that get much bigger than these ones, but these are very common, and in general they're about that big, but they can get much bigger, and they can weigh a lot as well. But it takes a very long time for them to grow, so you don't often see the very big ones. And out here also with the little ones, when they hatch, they can also get eaten by some birds, and sometimes the lions also do eat them, even though the tortoises sometimes eat the lion's poo, which helps them. Lions can also eat the smaller ones because their shell isn't so hard, so they can actually bite into it, and then they'll eat a tortoise. Remember, most tortoises walk around on land, and the terrapins are the ones in fresh water. Now, Gigi Master, if a lion eats grass, they do that sometimes to help their digestion. I don't know if you know at home, you might see your dogs or your cats that you have at home. Sometimes they eat grass as well, but that's when they normally have an upset stomach, so they'll eat grass, and that helps them to either vomit, to get out whatever's stuck inside their stomach, or it will come in the poo, but it helps to settle their stomach. So there's nothing wrong with an animal eating grass that normally eats meat. It does help them just to settle their tummy, hey? They don't have doctors like we do, and sometimes if they want to help themselves, that's what they'll do. They'll go and eat some grass when they've got a sore belly. You know, sometimes when you get stomach cramps and your tummy's sore when you ate something that didn't agree with you, and then you feel, oh, but then what happens? Mommy gives you some medicine, hey? But with these animals, they don't have mommy to give them medicine, so their medicine is to go and eat some grass. That's a very good way of treating yourself. Imagine you could do that. Now, seeing as we were talking about cats and eating grass, well, Steve's the one that's been watching cats. Let's get his opinion on it.
Cats love to eat grass. Well, I find they eat grass to throw up the fur ball that they've ingested, especially lions, because they eat so much and so quickly in their ravenous attempt to get as much in as they possibly can, and by eating grass makes them vomit. And there what we have is a vertebrae of an animal. I'm going to guess by the size it's probably a buffalo, and in the area here, that is all that we can find remaining of this poor soldier that was invariably eaten by something. Whether it was killed by a lion or whether it died of natural causes is hard to establish from the one bone. But talking about eating things, a lot of animals will actually feed on the bone, something called osteophagy. You find it more into the dry season, especially pregnant females needing a little bit more calcium in their diet, so they'll actually nibble on the bone to get all that different calcium inside that they're struggling to get out of the environment. Tortoises will feed on hyena dung. How gross does that sound? But to get the calcium that they need to develop their scutes and their shell. And who else? Porcupine? Warthog? I've seen giraffe eating giraffe bone. Very crazy, but Bone is bone, and you know, you need the nutrients, you'll eat them. So marvelous that that's what's left out here. And yeah, we have obviously moved off from the male lion, and Seb has nearly decapitated me again with the aerial on top of his head. And we are on a mission in towards the east. We don't know what we're going to find, but we're going to be looking at all the little things. We found a lion this afternoon, so now it is just time to relax and focus on some plants, some tracks, some dung, bones, as you know. And we're going to keep walking. Don't get caught up in the buffalo thorn there, Seb. A very nice buffalo thorn coming up here. And the Afrikaans name is a blink blaar waggebikkie, which basically means shiny leaf. Wait a minute. And it's very tasty leaves, in fact. It's my afternoon snack. I missed lunch, so I just quickly need to grab a couple. And you can see how well browsed it is. The entire top of the tree here has been really eaten by giraffe, potentially even kudu. And here it's been broken, probably by an elephant. Take care. Why are bones white? I've no idea. That's probably just the color the mineral calcium makes up. Seb, why are bones white? Well, they go white in the sun when they calcify. Why they're white? I actually have no idea. Why is the sky blue? Okay, well, hopefully James has managed to find that male lion again. Let's go see if he has.
No, James has not managed to find the male lion. James feels like he might be on a slightly wild goose chase at the moment. All the male lion has moved, I'm not sure. But Rexon is here also trying to help. Herbert is still trying to guide both of us in by the radio. Oops. There are obviously a lot of large and deeply irritating stumps in this area. The elephants have made themselves an enormous mess all over. There are aardvark holes everywhere. Very intimidating. A very sad question to have asked, Diana, and I'll tell it with a story. I was watching a video the other day from the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, and they had a chap called, I forget his name, but he became very famous in the 60s for owning a lion called Christian the lion, and he in fact bought this lion in a store in London as a cub. Anyway, eventually they reintroduced him to a lion pride in Kenya, and it was, I think, a rare example of a lion actually surviving in the wild after reintroduction. Big male lion, and his name was Christian, and he was involved with the Adamsons around there. And the story there is that what happened, the reason I'm telling you the story is that this fellow said that when he basically dropped off Christian the lion in Kenya in 1969, there were 390,000 lions left in the wild. Now, there are fewer than 20,000. So in almost that 50-year period, 49-year period, we've managed to lose more than, what is that? I mean, that's more than 90%. It's more than 90% of the lions. And I don't know how accurate his figure was of 390,000, but the figure of 20,000 is probably pretty accurate. And I think that it is just a travesty that humanity has allowed once the most widely spread mammal in the world to have been decimated to that extent is just a really shameful example of how we have interacted with the world. And I mean, that's just one species, one iconic species, no doubt, but you can just imagine how many others have been decimated by our activities as human beings. Now, we should be quite close now. Here comes Rexon. He seems to think that he knows where he's going. Trish, you say, so what a big drop. Yeah, absolutely. Can you see him? No, Rex can't see him. So, Tricia, an absolutely horrendous drop. I don't know that that figure of 390,000 is true. I'm not sure of its veracity, but there certainly were a huge number more than the 20,000, the paltry 20,000 we have now. And I often think that, you know, as human beings, we tend to think that a number like that is quite large. 20,000 is quite a large number by our normal daily standards. We're just going to follow Rex in here. But it really is a minute number when you consider the number of human beings there are in just a suburb or a borough of New York, for example, or in Johannesburg, where there are more than 5 million people, just in little Johannesburg. It's quite frightening to think how few lions there are. And if you compare them with the numbers of human beings, you know, human beings are more than 7 billion now. 7 billion is not a number that you and I don't believe, have any conception of. We can't conceive of 1,000 million or 7,000 million people. We don't understand how astronomically high that is. And if you couple that as well with the fact that if you go to the IUCN database, which is the red list, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, they have this red list which classifies every organism as, or on the scale of non-threatened or unthreatened, least concern to extinct. Lions, I think, are on the near threatened list or threatened list. I don't think they're considered endangered. I don't think that the white rhino is even considered endangered, which is frightening, I think, when you consider how few there are. Now, I'm sure that this driving is startlingly entertaining for you, but I'm afraid I think that this lion has absconded. So we will continue searching and go across to somebody with an animal or something decent to say.
Well, everyone, I'm still on the search, and I'm getting slightly frustrated because I'm not having any joy. So I think I'm going to change my tactics. I'm not going to be thinking like an animal anymore. I'm just going to think like me, and I'm going to go where I would like to go, which is down into the Mlolwati. I like that area, so let's try that tactic. I think I've been now for 2-3 days trying my hardest to find leopard and lion, and really coming up mostly unsuccessful. So, and they're around, the tracks and signs are there. I've just the way that I've normally been finding them, not been getting any luck. So I think what I need to do, head down to the river, into the Mlolwati, search the drainage lines there, and, well, if we don't find any animals, at least we see some different trees, and there's probably some monkeys around there. Maybe we'll see the odd owl and all sorts. So that's what I feel like doing now. That's what I'm going to do. So we're heading down towards Quarantine. So back into the central area once again, and then down past Vuyatela Dam. Maybe there'll be something, probably like wildebeest impala near to the dam there, the water point. And then from then on, I'm going to duck down into the drainage lines and move along like that. I think that that's the best idea. Now, Matthew, good question that you've asked. The only one in particular that is very common are the cuckoos, which lay their eggs. They brood parasites, so they lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and so that's one case where you'll find one species raising a different species young. But it's very rare to find any other animals actually doing that, because you won't particularly find impala raising zebra calves. You won't find buffalo raising rhino calves. Well, I mean, it's not impossible, but I've never seen that before. One of the animals that humans actually make do that is if we want to raise guinea fowl, then we'll put some wild guinea fowl eggs with the chickens in the coop, and then they will hatch growing up raised by the chickens and thinking that they are chickens, but they pretty much are the bush chickens because they are almost exactly the same in terms of habit and lifestyle. So very easy match there, but it's difficult to say if there's any other kind of matchup where you have different species raising young that are not their own. So, yes, in a particular environment. And here's Steph. Hi, Steph. Steph's out always working, doing the administration work that is. I don't envy him at all. Lots of work behind the scenes. So I'll rather be out here on the vehicle and doing the business like this than sitting and signing paperwork all day. Wow, I don't envy him not one bit. But yes, so if any of you know of any other animals that might raise different species young, then let us know, because I'm not quite sure I know of any others except for those tactics where they actually press for another species to do it for them. Let's watch this impala. He's making, look at that. I love watching them when they're rutting. Look at that. They're making lots of noise. I think he's doing it to a group of females. Always watching. Where are the females? What's going on? He's not worried about himself. He's not worried about eating. He's not worried about sleeping, drinking. All he is worried about is females and chasing away the other males, or potentially fighting with them. And that kind of roar that he was doing is all part of that display. I don't know, now he's standing in the shade, but he is a magnificent individual. And how many males would have already sort of gone through the line would be interesting to know, because, as I say, once they establish themselves as the dominant male, they could keep a group of females for up to about a week. But at that point, they're so ragged, they running around, keeping these females within the group, chasing away the males, not worrying about themselves, not drinking properly, not feeding properly, and their condition drops drastically. So by that stage, there could be another male that's established himself within the bachelor herd. Let's listen there. Listen. I hope you can hear that. Really funny sound he's making. The wind is also blowing in our direction, so might be quite soft. There he is. He's not doing it anymore for now. Let's just see if he does it anymore, and if he gets into battle with another male. I just want to see what he does next before we head down to Vuyatela Dam. You see, there's no feeding going on whatsoever. He's just looking for girls and looking for guys to fight with. Anyway, it's gone a little bit quiet there. Okay, everyone, I'm going to head down towards Vuyatela Dam. Since everybody was happy to see Steph, yes, I don't think he's been on the show for quite some time. And as I say, working hard behind the scenes, getting all sorts going with all sorts of different projects, and as well as Safari Live, keeping that running nicely and keeping us comfortable in the camp as well. So we owe a lot of gratitude to Steph. But while I head down towards the dam here, I wonder how it's going with the guys out on foot.
Yeah, well, we have found a rubbish pile of what appears to be termite body waste parts. and there are some small reddish ants busy scavenging through. We're on a bit of a termite mound now. I've never ever seen anything quite like this. I mean, this is the size of it. Here you can see my finger. It's all very small. It just looks like the carapaces of some termites that have been scattered outside of the den. That last waste bit, seemingly lots of heads, you see, popped up again. They're just like, it's like a rubbish chute just popping up from the inside. And the ants are the scavengers going through the pile looking for any bits and pieces that haven't been through the process inside. Because termites, when they die, invariably most of their body parts are recycled back into the soil, into the nutrients. But obviously this is the chitinous head, like the prawn scales you find in prawns. The head bit is really the hardest part to break down. And so the rest of the body is decomposing, and just that outer head part seems to be the order of the day. And what nourishment these little ants are getting from it is quite marvelous, in fact. And those are grains of sand you can see as well. It's very, very small, folks. Very, very small, and we just happened upon it as we stood in the shade of this termite mound. Don't forget to send through your questions to #SafariLive or follow us on the YouTube stream. Well, some of you 9 years old, we don't really have any colourful ants. All our ants that I know of are all black or red. Nothing really of any coloration. But lots of other funny, colourful insects. But how nice is this view through the grass, Seb? It's quite gorgeous. So, in the morning light, Samu, we saw that male lion this morning hiding in grass just like this. It was really quite gorgeous. But yeah, so I don't know of any really colourful, bright, contrasting ants. Lots of wasps and beetles and things like that can be quite contrasting, but no ants. We're going to leave our garbage pile here, the wastes of the bush, far better than our wastes that are polluting the ocean. Well, it seems like James has managed to find our lion. Let's go see how flat he is.
He's so flat we cannot actually see him anymore. He was up very briefly, but unfortunately Ralph was looking at termites at the time, and then while he was looking at termites, the thought of Ralph looking at termites bored him so profoundly that he went to sleep. Now, that's obviously because he has not met Ralph, he has not listened to Ralph tell a story about something like a termite, and this is why he is now flat. And it's so flat that we can't see him, but he is there. I promise. He was up. Herbert had to bring us in here. Oh, and it was Steve with the termites, not Ralph. I see. Did you see that shaking there, Viam? It was astounding, just in there. There was a bit of mane shaking going on. Oh, there's some... No. Can we see him? Yes, there's movement there. That is a lion, everybody. That's a large male lion of the Avoca Coalition. Where the other two are, we don't know. Just to give you a brief introduction to the Avocas, they are, of course, 3, and 2 of the others are not around. We don't know where they are. I'm afraid, Strawhead, I missed that question. The game driver's going ballistic in my ear. Can you go again with that, please, Lucas? Oh. Definitely, Strawhead, there was more prey because there was more space. I don't think the density of prey was any higher during the time that, when there were so many more lions, but the space available to them was that much higher. And I was talking to a guy in Kenya, a Kenyan, who I think he's Kenyan. Anyway, he lived in Kenya a long time. He's done a huge amount of research there, and he was saying how, throughout Kenya, lions used to be pretty much free roaming. And although they had national parks, and like they do now, there were no fences around them, and there were no fences between national parks either, which meant that they didn't have the kind of mosaic of fenced patchwork landscape that we have here in a place like South Africa. It was all kind of open, which meant that there was free roaming space for the lions to move, and that's all ended now. People are, what do they call it? There's something... they're calling it the divide or something, I forget what they call it, but basically everyone's fencing their own little patches in Kenya as they get title deed to the land. There's a lot of good socioeconomic reasons for doing that, but they're not good for wildlife fences. And I think that's happened throughout parts of Africa. And of course, since 1969, the population of Africa has exploded. It's just gone over about 1.1, I think 1.2 billion people, and back then it was probably about 800 million, which of course was not particularly high compared with what it is now. And so the space for animals has just declined massively. And so while I don't believe there was any more prey for them to eat, there was absolutely more space for them and their prey to exist. I mean, it really is a depressing thing, and it's the one thing that governments seem inescapably poor at dealing with, and for some reason unwilling to address, and that, of course, is the subject of population control. And it's only when it gets to the dire situation like you had in China that these sort of draconian laws get brought in. But throughout Africa, you will find very little talk of one or two child families or population control or family planning or anything like that. You'll find very little in any kind of government program that suggests perhaps we aren't making too many of ourselves. And that essentially is the problem. Angie, I know that it must seem absolutely impossible for you to understand how, from what you can see there, I can tell that that is an Avoca Male lion. I don't blame you at all. It is because we have seen him with his head up, and it is because we watched him the whole of this morning, and because of that, we recognize him. We know he is part of the Avoca Male Coalition, a coalition of 3 male lions, as I said, this one bigger than the other 2, and in fact he seems to be often just a little bit further away from them than they are from each other for some reason. I don't know. He might be a cousin rather than a brother. The other 2 could easily be litter mates, so we just know him because we recognize him. And they're just starting to come into this area, quite possibly will take over this territory hitherto owned by the Birmingham boys, who have, well, spread themselves too thin. I think they've gone down towards the Sand River, where there's a huge territory being vacated by the demise of an ancient and very well ancient in lion terms coalition of male lions called the Majingelan, and they've just got old and decrepit and popped off one by one. So the Birminghams have gone down there, opening up a space for the Avoca males, these young 3. I think they're lucky to have a territory, or the possibility of a territory, at their current age. We think they are probably about 3.5 years old at this stage. Let's have one last look at that particularly fine patch of grass where he's chosen to lie down, and then I think we'll probably head out from here and maybe pop back a little bit later. Oh, was that some more movement there, Vim? Yes. Now, I found as my father gets slightly older, he likes to sleep even more during the afternoons. Well, you might think from the amount of sleep that this lion is doing during the afternoon that 3.5 was about the oldest they could get. But Jack, believe it or not, they get even older than this. And they only get to, on average, of about 11 years, we think, in this area, probably 10 or 11 years, often less than that. The oldest lion that I know of in the Sabi Sands was a 17-year-old male of the Sparta Pride down in the sort of central Sabi Sand region. Look at that magnificent lion picture there. Oh, goodness gracious, it's an ear. He was 17 years old, and I mean, he looked pretty ropey by the time he was 17. But their age very much is determined by the amount of pressure exerted on them by rival males. And I think that's one of the main reasons that the Majingelan coalition survived for as long as they did. Right, I'm being set upon by a grasshopper here. Oh, he's gone. Okay, let's forget about the grasshopper. Go from the grasses to a tree.
A dead tree. It was once a knobthorn. And what has happened to it is that the bark has been stripped, and this is something that we are seeing a lot happening in the Greater Kruger National Park, where elephants are stripping the bark of knobthorns, and these trees and marula trees are disappearing at an alarming rate. And what we do know about knobthorns is they are generally the preferred tree species for vultures and large raptors to nest in. So we're seeing a decline in the nesting sort of density of vultures and large raptors, whereas areas that are adjacent to the park where there's no elephant, there are huge colonies of whiteback vultures busy nesting. So, but this is a natural process, bear in mind, folks, but because there are fences, there's no ability for the elephants to migrate like these ants are doing up and down the wood. They're migrating up and down, feeding and doing whatever they're doing. But this tree itself will form a habitat tree and it'll probably stand for a number of years, forming holes and cavities for a number of nesting birds, insects, all sorts of life forms. So a natural process, but by no means should we condemn it, but we are seeing these trees disappearing at an alarming rate. So it's important to understand what's going on there and how do we conserve. We need bigger areas, we need large areas, and as we go along you'll see there's lots of knobthorns. There's another one behind, there's another one there. Just in this area there's 5 that we can see. 1, 2, 3 at the back, 4, and then in the sunshine, number 5. Excuse me. So it's an interesting topic, and it's always open to debate. What do people think? But you can go on for hours about the elephant debate. And bear in mind, what we are also seeing is because of the number of impala around, there's no baby knobthorns coming through. We don't find them. And when we do find them, what's to stop the huge herd of impala moving through from eating it up? So this is a natural process, but the recruitment of it is not happening. That is the problem. That's what we need to pay attention to. But before we run away from us, we've got a tree quiz time. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And here is the tree. I'm going to let Seb get right in on the leaves. And let me tell you, let's see who out there can tell me what tree this is. Hashtag Safari Live. Let us know what tree it is. There's a nice example of this one. That is Rexon from Voyatella just driving past. Well, I'm going to take this leaf sample with me so that we can discuss it once I get the answers in. And while we do that, let's go over to Ralph and see how he's doing.
So everyone, I've gotten down into the riverbed, the Mlolwati, and look at this. We've got wonderful tambuti trees, jackalberries, the odd nyala tree, we've got some gardenias, we've got all sorts. That's why I like it down here, and that's why I've come down. As I said, not having much luck trying to look for the leopard and lions, but I'm sure there's going to be something exciting down here. We often find the monkeys down here, and often there's some owls roosting up in the trees during the day. Let's just keep our eyes open. I have found, who was it? I think it was Hosanna down on when I was on the bushwalk, also down in this same riverbed. It always reminds me of driving in Namibia, because we used to drive hundreds of kilometers worth of dry riverbeds like this. And the old joke goes in Namibia, what do you do when you fall in a river in Namibia? You stand up and dust yourself off, because they're all like this. So they're ephemeral, and they only flow after it's heavy downpours. And yeah, dry riverbeds, lots of sand, and the elephants and animals use that as oasis in the desert. So while we're looking for these cats, it seems James's one has lifted its head. Off to him, quick!
Well, it sort of has lifted its head. It's not exactly we're giving us a full face shot, but he's now licking his left paw, which perhaps has a small thorn in it. You can see he's still got his mohawk, And that is the less than attractive stage of male lionhood. It's just before they get to their magnificence. You get this sort of stage, and then the stage before it, which is being exhibited by the young Nkuhuma cub, almost 2 years old, and he really does have a wispy teenage mane. This is more the mane of a sort of 18-year-old that will eventually go into a full-blooded, well, shall we say, hipster mane, or the mane, for example, the beard that someone like VM sports, or Tristan, for example, or Eggsy in the Final Control. All of them are mature males now, and at one stage of their lives, well, they gave the same impression as this fellow. Not quite in their prime yet. We also have, of course, Luke in the Final Control, and he would be described as a maneless lion. He would be described as a Tsavo lion. He will probably never have a mane, a little bit like Brent Leo Smith. It might be why Brent Leo Smith's favourite story is the maneless lions of Tsavo. And, well, I now have to concede defeat to Luke, who said he just keeps his mane on his head. And he does have a magnificent set of hair on his head, and you all know I do not. Touche, Luke. You win. No, Minamu, I do not. I believe that this lion is the biggest lion in the coalition, and it is not unusual for a coalition of lions to spend time apart, especially if they are not litter mates. VM reckons that this cat here is one of the biggest he's seen. I remember when the Birminghams first arrived thinking to myself, these guys are not very big. I maintain that they're not very big, they're not tiny, but when you compare them with the size of that massive Matimba, heavy, what was he called, hairy belly, he was the first dominant male lion that I counted over here. He was a monster. And I think that this fellow is going to be roughly the same size. So it might be that he's just a little bit too much for the other two. I don't think that the coalition now. Can you believe it? He's actually up. VM, do you remember the, I think was it 80s or maybe late 90s Afrikaans children's show called Minamu? With Karel Rampkat. Yes. Minamu, Minamu. I just remember the tune. Now he's limping. Absolutely for sure he's limping. This could be an epic shot. VMP, let me move around. See if we can't get a look at him staring into the sun. A la Lion King. Ah, there we go. This might be worth taking my camera out for. I don't normally take my camera out for lions at all. He seemed to have picked up a fairly large forest under the car. That's all right. Hello, big fella. There we go. That's quite nice. How's that then? Will that do? Just gives him a bit more vantage here. He's definitely limping. I doubt that's from a fight with his coalition mates, and I wonder if it isn't from some sort of conflict with the Birminghams. The one thing those Birminghams have got is a real kind of aggression. Monique, I haven't seen him stand up sufficiently to say whether he's as big as Scarface, the male lion of the Mara. I don't think he's quite as tall yet. I think he'll get there. I don't think his mass is the same, so Scarface is still a pretty heavy lion. Also, Scarface is a little bit like a bird, where you can't really tell their size because he's got so much hair. He's got so much fur on him from his mane. You know, if you were to shave it all away, he would look half the size that he does. In general, I would say that the lions here are exactly the same size as the lions of the Mara, so I don't think that he's any smaller. VM's just saying he thought the one notch boy which was one of the lions down near the southern end of the Mara Triangle. Liam was just saying he thought he was absolutely enormous as well. How would you compare this chap with Scarface, Liam? Yes. Now we haven't spent a huge amount of time with Scarface of late, so it's difficult to say. But he's definitely licking that limpy left front paw. And he could easily have caught him a claw. Let's try, Antoinette. Let's see what happens. When he turns towards us, we'll look straight into his eyes and let's see what happens. Come on, look here now. Naturally, he's now gone to sleep. Antoinette, no, it's not dangerous to look into a lion's eyes. I have stared long and hard into the soulless eyes of a lion, and they do not react. So it's nothing like a dog reacts if you stare into its eyes. Now it's possible it's just not recognizing the eyes because I'm sitting in a car, but no. Now I think we should go and ask the same question of Steve, who found this cat on foot, and see if he would look it in the eye.
Yeah, well, we clearly survived and we moved out without a scratch. Thank you, James. It is marvelous seeing a male lion on a vehicle, but to be able to approach one on foot, very, very exciting. The reason why we've stopped here, my last discussion was about the knobthorn, about how elephants have damaged it. That one is dead. But what we see all the time out here is, and this is the knobthorn, it's been pushed over. Here it is. It's still alive. You can still see the branches, but it's been pushed over, and what it has done, it has created an enormous habitat, microclimate all around here, where there are lovely grass species growing. Sort of you take a foot away from the tree, and most of the grass species you find are these three-awn grasses, which are all pioneer species. Not a very good grass, and this whole open area between this fallen tree and the next fallen tree is basically completely overgrazed and dominated by pioneer species. But where the tree has fallen, it is dominated by climax species, and two of them being the red grass, Themida triandra, and Panicum maximum, which are two of the most delicious and tasty grasses around, and they are growing in and around because of this fallen tree. So what it allows is for seeds to develop, not just for the birds to feed on, but a seed bank to then recolonize the areas around, and it also makes an enormous amount of habitat for scrub hares, genets, small ground nesting birds, all sorts of seed-eating birds. So this one devastating, destructive elephant that broke down this tree has created the habitat for an enormous amount. We're not even talking about the insects that could be inside there. So we've got to look at it from both sides. There's destruction, but there's also clarity. Is it the right word? But they are very, very instrumental in the creation of so much of what goes on out here in the savanna biome. Okay, let's hear the answers for the tree quiz. Dun dun dun. Ellie, no, it was not a red bush willow tree. Red bush willow tree is a simple leaf. This is most certainly not a simple leaf. I've broken off a leaf there from my hat, but this is what we call a compound leaf. This entire thing is the leaf, compound, and it ends in one leaflet, so we call this an imparipinnate, or terminal leaflet. So imparipinnately compound. Anyone else got a guess out there? We can keep it going all afternoon if need be. It is a common tree, and I know some of you do know what it is. Paul, here is a knobthorn over here. This is a knobthorn leaf. And this is the other leaf. So very, very different. Very different. Sienna is not a round-leaf teak, but the round-leaf teak's got a very similar appearance to this one. It is a very similar appearance, but I'm going to grab you one. If you want to walk over here with me, Seb. We've got a round-leaf teak. They are quite small. They don't get very big. Here's a round-leaf teak. Ooh, Linda's on the right sort of track, Linda, but you are incorrect by one word. This is the round-leaf teak. The closest, well, ladies and gentlemen, it is not a marula. It's not a marula, because marulas have got what we call petioles over here. That stalk is longer and longer. It's got a little bit of a grayish sort of antacid sort of feel to it. So what could it be if it's not a marula? Dun, dun, dun. I'm going to leave that with you folks for a little while, and we're going to carry on. And what we see again is two more knobthorns just in the open that are dead. So it's what's happening out here, and it's the fact that we're not seeing the recruitment, but natural process where all the branches are falling down. If I walked through there, I would shred my legs to pieces. So we're going to have to walk around, and that's what animals do as well. So it's a beautiful organic environment over there. Lots of shade, moisture, seeds, snakes, birds. Okay, well, let's go over to Mr. Ralph Kirsten and see if he's managed to find his elephants.
Well, I haven't found them just yet, but let's go down. I'm heading now to Chitwa Dam. There was no results driving through the Mlolwati. Here I see reasonably fresh elephant dung, but it's not from right now. So hopefully we'll find something happening. We always know that the hippos are going to be moving around. There's the odd crocodile, and there'll probably be some good birds around as well. So I always like coming down to Chitwa. And if we're lucky, we might see some other animals too, like elephant, possibly even the odd leopard moving around in the area. It's quite funny because even this morning, chatting with Herbie, the game scout, he's of the opinion, and I agree, that we've probably got quite a few leopards that maybe have made some kills, because from us having a lot of activity in terms of us finding their tracks very fresh all over the place, it's all of a sudden gone dead. So we're of the opinion that they've potentially simultaneously found themselves some food. But we could be wrong. They could have just moved into different areas, as they do. No fences here, so they can shift around as they please. But it's just strange, a lot of activity and then all of a sudden nothing. He might be right. Take care, absolutely. If an animal makes a kill, you can, like for instance, if a lion or a leopard makes a kill, you can lions and leopards coming in for that. You can also have hyena, jackals, all sorts. I just want to have a look at this. There's a nice little baby waterbuck. So take care. There can be a lot of different animals that will follow. Jackals, hyenas, the vultures can come down from the sky, the battlers, even the marabou stork, and then other lions and leopards, etc. So lots of animals. As soon as there is blood spilt, you can have animals. You can have animals that will then follow in. Now look at this little youngster, the little waterbuck. Mommy looks quite relaxed. She's watching us, and the baby just lying up in the shade. And they do look like very cuddly teddy bears. And you watch her, she's ruminating. She's probably going to regurgitate shortly. There it comes, and there she chews again. So passing it down into the four-chambered stomachs, the rumen, the reticulum, the omasum, and the abomasum, all with different functions, digestion and fermentation and absorption. It's really quite an intricate process. It has the ruminants in the digestive system, and that little youngster possibly, most likely, be suckling from mum. one of the characteristics of a mammal. Look how big its ears are. Very big, being able to hear every little thing around. Denise, I agree with you. It is very cute indeed. It's just a shame that she's lying in the shade for us, that we can't see it quite nicely. You see our mom's face is showing up nicely in the sun there. She's going about her daily chore of ruminating. You know, they do need to spend a bit of time actually gathering all the vegetable matter in their mouth, but then later they also need to spend time actually digesting it. It's one of the disadvantages of being a ruminant. However, you can grab your food and move into a different area away from potential danger and then relax and do your digesting. Whereas the hindgut fermenters, they need to literally almost continuously feed. So beautiful setting here near to Chitwa Dam. We're just a little bit up from the waterhole itself. Paula, I think that baby's probably a month or two old. It's not much more than that. It's still a very young one, as there's a little African monarch flitting about in front of it. Beautiful colors there. Quite noxious as well. Bad tasting. I'm just gathering some nectar, I suppose, on that little flower. That looks like it might be some wild sage or something. A lot of sawtooth lovegrass there with all those seeds, you can see, quite dominant here in this particular area. Here's Mom showing herself in the sunlight a little bit more. See that toilet seat on her bum? One of the signs that a little baby is going to use to be able to follow Mom if there's any potential danger and she has to run off. That's one of those follow me signals. Now, I wonder if we should head on down towards the dam and see. There's quite a few hippos that are shifting around. Okay, so now that I'm moving down towards the water, let's see, maybe we'll see a lion or a leopard or anything's possible, but we sure are going to see some hippos. And I wonder how James is going since he's left that lion. I wonder if he's found anything else exciting, because that was an excellent one, wasn't it?
Yes, we have found a few exciting things. Well, exciting-ish. We've got an impala having a little drinky. Hello, impala. We're going to take a photograph of you. Please continue with your drink. There we are. Do not be afraid. Come on. Don't go away. This is your one moment to shine. You're not in amongst all the others that look exactly like you, which means that you alone can impress in the golden evening light here in the Greater Kruger National Park. No? Not going to take the chance? Just going to wander off into obscurity like the rest of your friends? Well, that is your choice, I suppose. I feel like there should be some sad soundtrack music now. Anyway, that is not the only exciting thing we have here. We have got a whole lot of wildebeest and nyala across the way there. There they are. Very nice. It's a pity I don't have a switch for the open comms anymore. I don't think it works anymore. No, it doesn't. But we just had a lovely song from Luke in the final control, who sang the song All By Myself by Celine Dion. He sounded just like Celine Dion, actually. He doesn't look like Celine Dion, though. Thankfully. Let's just go around and have a better look at these wildenbeestens in this lovely light. There we go. I was vicariously sighing and wheezing for Rusty. This is the aging vehicle I'm driving. Alrighty. Here we have some wildenbeestens. Should we go with the wildenbeestens first? Wildenbeest? There we go. I cannot believe that this bunch escaped the attentions of the Nkuhuma Pride the other night. They are sitting here ripe pickings for a lion. Half the youngsters have never even seen a lion, I don't think. Anyway, they have survived intact. And I'm quite grateful. I like these wildebeest. I'm not one who enjoys watching death in the bush. I find it rather disturbing. I'm just going to be quiet for a while, and you can listen to the sounds of the wind and the pearl-spotted owl. Wasn't that pretty, everybody? Backlit wildebeest, and the sounds of crested francolins in the far distance. A pearl-spotted owl going. A couple of ring-necked doves, and the old snort from one of the wildebeest, who seems to have an allergy. I think I'll sit here a little bit longer and see what else is on offer in the calming, golden slices of evening sunlight.
Yes, well, while Seb gets all artistic with the light coming through that beautiful grass, I believe we have a winner with the tree quiz. Let's hear it, Luke. Cyan, Wazzy, and Joe. Well done. You got the false marula. Quite a characteristic sort of leaf structure with the terminal leaf and the compound leaves. Now, apparently with false marulas, you can take the roots, which are very sort of covered in hair, and you can use them to sort of, you break them down and you inhale them like snuff, and it's used as a sedative. You can also smoke them. Bit of a sedative if you're having trouble sleeping. And on that note, the beautiful grass that Sebastian is actually looking at is called herringbone grass, and quite easily looked at. It looks like one of those cartoon characters of when Garfield eats a fish and it pulls out, or one of those things pulls out these bones. Does it not look like that? Yeah, just me who thinks that. So Pogonathria squarosa is the scientific name, and because squarosa looks like a squirrel's tail, looks like a squirrel's tail as well. But a magical plant, because this actually grows in disturbed places, and what you can do with it is you can take the entire plant and throw it into stagnant pools of water to eliminate the snail and the bilharzia disease that certain snails transport. If you've not heard of bilharzia, it's called schistosoma, and it's a disease that we can get. It comes into our blood system and affects our urinary tracts and our kidneys, and if you don't take any tablets, it can really be bad. You end up peeing blood, and that's not good. But you take tablets and you'll be fine. But you can take these into the stagnant water and you can eliminate it. So I think that's quite marvelous. But it is quite common all over Africa. We don't have the cleanest of waters in certain places, but that's a natural thing with the sort of the rural areas in Africa. Elizabeth, we don't plant any trees here. I've got friends down in the Cape who've got a company called the Precious Tree Company, or Precious Tree Project, and they're reforesting the southern Cape, and they get donations and people come and plant trees with them, and they do it all the time. That's marvelous. They're trying to expand the once large forest. It's now very small, trying to make it much bigger. But up here, we don't really plant any trees. We don't get too involved in that kind of management. If anything, I mean, when I talk about the elephants damaging those large trees, we're seeing an increase in tree density because of the lack of vegetation. So if we look over here, the grass cover here, there's no way you're going to get a fire in here that's going to build up any sort of fuel load that's going to burn trees down. And that's what we're seeing in the savannah these days. There's more carbon in the atmosphere because of industrial pollution, and trees are benefiting. Trees are benefiting from the organic or the carbon in the atmosphere, and that's how they're building. We've been through this before, long ago. All the forests were created because there's a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, and that took it all in. But trees are carbon sinks. They hold the carbon in. So it's actually very important to plant trees to sequester the carbon from the atmosphere and lower the CO2 levels. But here we don't plant any trees. Knobthorns and marulas are just two of those very special trees, very characteristic trees to this environment that we are seeing disappear because of management and elephant interactions. And that was a knobthorn that said, "Don't pass." That was a knobthorn, I think it was. Small little knobthorn. Holding on to my sock, this time at least, though, I'm not bleeding. Like, was it you last time who was bleeding, Seb? Yeah, we were both bleeding. Because the bush is not Africa, they say, is not for sissies. You're going to bleed out here. It's part and parcel of being on a game walk. Obviously, it's not ideal to walk people through a thicket of knobthorn. You try and avoid it, but every now and again, you don't see them. I remember back in my days in St. Gita, we used to do vegetation surveys, and the grass was this tall, and you'd come across baby knobthorns about that tall, and it would always catch you on the leg here. And once it catches you on the leg, you've got to go backwards and twist to get it out, and you always bleed. Well, we've got a nice sun setting in the distance then. I'm sure Ralph has got some beautiful light at Chitwa Dam. Let's go and see how it looks.
Well, look at that, everybody. I've made it down now to the dam, and there's all sorts of action going on with the hippos. A bit of argy-bargy. There's a little bit of porpoising and jumping around. Oh, there we go. Playfully just pushing and shoving each other in the water there. Bit of opening the mouths, trying to show how big their tusks are. And everybody seems quite happy. What a wonderful setting it is. There's the old African darter just keenly watching on, almost like the referee for the hippos wrestling match. He doesn't seem quite interested with them. He's almost a bit like, "What are you guys up to? You're messing up my fishing grounds." And some of them, you can see how shallow it is there. Some of them just coming out half their body. So they must be bending their legs where they are. It's lying flat on their bellies. Lots of pink ears. There's all sorts going on. Lots of scratches on their backs as well, but that's quite common. You spotted Craig. Oh, fish eagle's on the move. Is he going to hunt? We'll be very lucky if we see him hunt. But he's got to spot the fish from quite a way off. There he goes up and gets some height. It's a nice... Saskia, yeah, I think the hippos will probably move a bit out the way when there's elephants that come down swimming. Yeah, they're quite a bit bigger than the hippos, so they generally, yeah, elephants generally dominate waterholes if they want to come and get boisterous, get playful. And so everything else does shift out of their way. And there's lots of space here at Chitwa Dam, so it's not really a problem. And everybody can find their own little spot. So I wouldn't worry too much about the hippos or the elephants, because there's a lot of water here, and it's not a dwindling resource at the moment. It's only when things start getting really tight and there's not much space, there's not much water, then there can be a bit of conflict between the animals. And that one looks like he's playing around with something in his mouth. See how it's walking? That's actually literally, that's nice to see, because that's what they do on the bottom, even when there is, or when it is deeper. They're being very playful, hey? So, welcome to all the viewers. We are down here at Chitwa Dam in the Djuma concession of the Greater Kruger National Park in South Africa, and right next to one of these beautiful lodges in the South African bushveld. What a perfect spot to be sitting and watching hippos very happily playing around in the water. And there is all sorts going on down here. We've got an African darter seemingly getting a little bit irritated with the hippos, showing it a bit of attention. But imagine you could be here sitting on the porch sipping back on an amarula, locally made just down the road in Hoedspruit, after you've flown into the Hoedspruit airport from Johannesburg, and you could be sitting watching hippos, and who knows, maybe elephants and lions and everything else comes down to have a drink. Steve from Canada, thanks for commenting that it is amazing, or looks as such. Well, I can tell you I'm here and it is wonderful. I'm just hoping that we're going to get to hear the African fish eagle, who is also present with us at the moment. There he is on the tree on the opposite side, just looking to see if it can catch itself some fish from up high up there. It needs to spot something before it makes its approach. And that really iconic call of an African fish eagle is really hard to beat. And there's all sorts happening here at the moment. So, my name is Ralph Kirsten, and I'm sitting here on this beautiful waterhole, and what a wonderful afternoon it has been. The sun is busy setting, it is lovely and warm, there's not many mosquitoes around, and I am just thoroughly enjoying myself. Now, there's not only me out this afternoon on Game Drive, I believe Steve is out as well. Let's go and see what he's been able to find.